This video delves into one of the darkest chapters of 20th century history. We explore Benito Mussolini's brutal colonial project in Libya, a campaign of conquest and subjugation. Our focus will be on the systematic genocide perpetrated by the fascist regime and its enduring, devastating consequences. The story of Italy in Libya is a chilling testament to unchecked power and ideological extremism. It reveals how a nation, under the sway of a totalitarian leader, could inflict unimaginable suffering on an entire population. This narrative is crucial for understanding the roots of modern conflicts and the long shadow of colonialism. Libya, a vast North African land, became more than just a colonial possession for fascist Italy. It transformed into a grim testing ground for the regime's most extreme policies. Here, the concepts of total war, ethnic cleansing, and concentration camps were refined and brutally applied, long before their more infamous manifestations in Europe. The echoes of this past resonate deeply today. Understanding this history is not merely an academic exercise, it is a vital step towards acknowledging forgotten atrocities and learning from the past. We must confront these uncomfortable truths to prevent their recurrence. Italy's colonial ambitions in North Africa predated the rise of fascism. The newly unified nation sought to assert its place among European powers, viewing overseas territories as essential for prestige and resources. Libya, strategically located across the Mediterranean, became a prime target for this expansionist drive. In 1911, Italy launched its invasion of the Ottoman provinces of Tripolitania and Cyrenaica. This military action marked the beginning of a long and bloody occupation. Italy formally declared these regions as its colonies, renaming them Italian Libya, despite fierce local resistance. The Italian forces were met with immediate and fierce opposition from the indigenous Libyan population. Senussi fighters, led by figures like Omar al-Mukhtar, and various tribal leaders united to defend their homeland. Their resistance was tenacious, prolonging the conflict for years. From the outset, Italian military tactics were characterized by extreme brutality. Massacres of civilians, summary executions, and widespread looting became common practices. These early actions set a grim precedent for the violence that would escalate under fascist rule. The initial phase of the Italian occupation was far from a peaceful civilizing mission. It was a violent imposition of foreign rule, met with determined resistance. As one observer noted, Italy arrived with bombs, not books, signaling its intent through force rather than diplomacy or development. This early period established a pattern of repression and resistance. It laid the groundwork for the more systematic and devastating policies that would follow. The stage was set for a conflict that would define Libya's destiny for decades. Benito Mussolini's rise to power in 1922 fundamentally reshaped Italy's colonial agenda. His fascist ideology, rooted in aggressive nationalism and imperial ambition, breathed new life into the pursuit of a vast Italian empire. Libya, already under Italian control, became central to this grand vision. Mussolini envisioned a new Roman Empire, with the Mediterranean as its mare nostrum, our sea. Libya was not merely a distant colony, it was to be an integral part of this expanded Italian state. The fascist regime was determined to achieve complete and undisputed control over the territory. To underscore its importance, Libya was symbolically renamed the Fourth Shore of Italy. This designation implied that Libya was as much a part of the Italian mainland as its northern or southern coasts. It was a declaration of permanent annexation and total integration. The primary objective of this intensified imperial drive was the full subjugation of Cyrenaica. This eastern region of Libya had remained a stronghold of resistance, particularly among the nomadic desert tribes. Their continued defiance was an affront to fascist authority and had to be crushed. To achieve this, Mussolini enlisted General Rodolfo Graziani, a figure whose name would become synonymous with brutality. Graziani, already notorious for his ruthlessness in other colonial campaigns, was nicknamed the Butcher of Fezzan for his earlier actions in southern Libya. He was given a free hand to implement the fascist will. This period marked a chilling shift in Italian policy towards Libya. The goal was no longer merely colonization or pacification. It evolved into a systematic campaign of annihilation, targeting not just armed combatants but entire populations deemed obstacles to fascist control. The stage was set for an unprecedented level of state-sponsored violence. The core of Italy's colonial brutality in Libya unfolded between 1929 and 1933. Under General Graziani's command, the fascist regime unleashed a campaign of terror designed to crush all resistance and consolidate its hold. This period represents a clear case of state-sponsored genocide. Graziani's forces systematically targeted the nomadic Bedouin tribes of Cyrenaica, who formed the backbone of the resistance. Their traditional way of life, their mobility, and their connection to the land were seen as threats. The campaign aimed to eliminate their ability to support or join the insurgency. The Italian military employed advanced and devastating weaponry against a largely tribal population. Chemical weapons, specifically mustard gas, were deployed from the air against civilian encampments and livestock. This horrific tactic caused widespread death and suffering, poisoning the land and its inhabitants. Air raids became a common feature of the campaign, striking villages and nomadic groups with impunity. These attacks were not precision strikes against military targets, they were designed to terrorize and depopulate vast areas, forcing compliance through fear and destruction. One of the most egregious aspects of this genocidal campaign was the forced relocation of over 100,000 Bedouins. Entire communities were rounded up and marched across the desert, often for hundreds of miles, to newly constructed concentration camps. This was a deliberate act of ethnic cleansing. These notorious camps, including El Agheila, Sulak, and El Obeya, were established in barren, inhospitable regions. They were designed not for rehabilitation or temporary detention, but for the systematic destruction of the interned population through neglect and deprivation. Conditions within these camps were horrific beyond description. Prisoners were subjected to extreme overcrowding, starvation rations, and a complete lack of sanitation and medical care. Disease, particularly typhus and tuberculosis, spread rapidly, claiming countless lives. Executions were also rampant, often carried out publicly as a deterrent. Graziani himself, in his own memoirs, chillingly admitted to executing over 12,000 civilians. This figure, likely a conservative estimate, underscores the immense scale of the atrocities committed under his command. The impact on Libyan society was catastrophic. Entire tribes vanished from the historical record, their members perishing within the barbed wire enclosures and the unforgiving desert sands. The social fabric of Cyrenaica was torn apart, its population decimated and traumatized. This period represents a deliberate and systematic attempt to eradicate a people and their culture. It was a calculated act of demographic engineering, driven by fascist ideology and executed with ruthless efficiency. The scars of this genocide run deep in the collective memory of the Libyan people. The brutal Italian occupation of Libya finally ended with Italy's defeat in World War II. After 1943, Libya was administered by British and French forces, marking a transition from one form of foreign control to another. The country eventually gained its independence in 1951, but the legacy of the fascist era persisted. Despite the overwhelming evidence of atrocities, Italy has largely failed to formally acknowledge its colonial crimes in Libya. For decades, there was no official apology, no comprehensive reparations, and little public education about the genocide. This silence has been a source of deep resentment. The post-war relationship between Italy and Libya was complex, often prioritizing economic interests over historical justice. Italy maintained significant economic ties, particularly in oil exploration, construction, and arms deals. these commercial links often overshadowed the unresolved historical grievances. A symbolic agreement was finally reached in 2008 between Italy's then Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi and Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi. Italy formally apologized for its colonial past and pledged $5 billion in reparations over 25 years, primarily for infrastructure projects. This was a significant, though belated, step. However, the implementation of this agreement was disrupted by the 2011 NATO-led attack was the subsequent collapse of the Gaddafi regime. Western powers' intention of to topple the Gaddafi regime and still to this day Libya destabilized due to Western interests. Italian president's promise for reparations largely stalled, leaving many of the historical wounds unaddressed and unhealed. The path to true reconciliation remains incomplete. Libya continues to grapple with profound instability, a condition undeniably shaped by latest Western-led NATO attacks changed the life of Libyans. Gaddafi's free education, healthcare and free home programs for his people stopped. The terrorist groups which supported by US and its allies to control oil-rich Libyan lands. The arbitrary borders drawn by European powers, the destruction of traditional social structures, and the deep-seated trauma of the genocide have all contributed to ongoing internal divisions and conflicts. The failure to fully confront and reconcile with this dark chapter of history has had lasting repercussions. It highlights the importance of historical accountability, not just for the victims, but for the perpetrators and their descendants. Ignoring such legacies only perpetuates cycles of misunderstanding and injustice. This video concludes by emphasizing the critical importance of remembering these buried legacies of empire. The genocide in Libya under Mussolini's fascist regime serves as a stark reminder of humanity's capacity for cruelty and the devastating consequences of unchecked power. We must ensure that such atrocities are never forgotten, and that their lessons are learned. Mussolini's empire may have crumbled, but its ruins still echo across the desert. Libya paid the price for fascist dreams. It's time the world remembered the crimes committed under the sand. Please subscribe to Turkish Odyssey. It's free to subscribe. It helps us to bring more stories. Our next video of African injustice is episode 8, The United States in Liberia, Freedom or Control. Like, share, and comment to expose the buried legacies of empire. Thank you for watching. See you in next adventure.